got? What else have we got on this table? Because obviously there are a few items around here that people are probably really keen to ask about. But we'll start with.
Show a few simple ones.
Yep.
This is a belt, Viking era belt, made by Jorgencraft again. Spacer, riveted in. You can hang things directly off this, but it also helps with the lengths of leather because getting a long length of leather to make a belt from can be tricky.
Now that is interesting, isn't it? Because then that comes into the fact that the animals at the time, especially in places like Iceland or northern Scotland and stuff like that, would have been overall smaller. Hardy,
they
still
don't
tough,
tend to be
but
very
smaller.
big. They're short and stocky.
Mm.
And again, people think, oh, a belt has to be one big piece. Well, no, you can make it in lots of little pieces. You can put joiners and spaces. Some of them had tons of little spaces in them. So yeah, that's a great way of saving leather and also making an interesting
little trinket. And I guess another way of wearing your wealth, because you can put metal on your leather.
Exactly. Some belts actually from the Viking era had fake tassels, like fake belt ends that are sewn onto it periodically. So you have 3 or 4 of them on there purely just to have another metal cap because it was showing off.
Swag.
Yeah.
That's how it is. So what do you support from your belt?
Lots of different things. Let's have a look here. We've got...
Oh, geez. I wonder what this could be.
You probably recognize this. I did a video of this when I first got it. It's been around the block a few times since then, and it's got a new handle. Which I
Hold on, I'll zoom in on that.
So it's an Albion Squireline Viking sword. It came in fairly good nick. They take some shortcuts with the Squireline swords to save money, which is totally understandable. That's what they do. I've cleaned it up a bit and I've sanded it a bit and re-gripped it.
So there's sort of no stress for the price point. There's no stress doing your own customizations
No, exactly,
to it.
and I think that's what they intend people to do. I've seen an awful lot of Squirelines that have had re-gripping because they only come with a standard black leather. This is kangaroo leather on here because it's nice.
Australia, yeah.
Australia. I like using it. It's strong leather and it oils really nicely.
And it's quite thin as well. It's very strong for its thickness.
It is, and this too, the leather on here is also kangaroo. I use it a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is an Albion Squire Viking.
Yep.
It's a good sword. We've got the scabbard that I made for it.
And does this also involve kangaroo leather and things like that?
This is actually pig leather.
Okay.
So this is pig leather. This is kangaroo on here, and that's cow. So a menagerie of animals on here. So it's a wood core with wool lining. It's been oiled, so it keeps the blade safe from moisture. And we've got some tablet woven braid decoration on the end there.
Damn.
The peg is Taz oak, which is an Australian hardwood. That's been carved.
And why does it have that secondary belt on it?
This is to go over your shoulders, like a shoulder strap, and then that gets put underneath your waist belt to hold the sword steady. Okay. There are other ways of suspending them too, but I found this is the best way for a Viking sword.
Okay. So that kind of comes into the thing, I guess, of rather than hanging, you've got 3 pouches on your belt, plus a sword, plus a scabbard. Instead, you can just have your belt for your pouch, or your pouches on your belt, but then you can support your scabbard.
I've seen people who try to put too much off one belt, and it looks silly. You're better off doing what they would have done and have specific items for specific jobs.
That makes sense.
Sorry. But yeah, I've actually made another one of these now, which is a bit better. This was the first incarnation of one of these. They're nice, but they take an awful long time to make.
I imagine. Well, that's custom fit leather, isn't it? The whole thing's been shrunk.
I do it all wet. So when I do the leather work, I do it wet and then let it dry. Yeah, they're scabbards. The higher end scabbards, anyway, that are good quality, end up costing more than the swords.
So, say you can't afford a sword and a scabbard and all the accoutrement, what would you use besides your sax?
Most people would have had one of these.
Right.
Now, swords were expensive and they weren't very common. Most people would have an axe or a spear. And most people who came from a farm would have had an axe anyway, so you just bring that along with you. There was conjecture, I remember Instagerm talking at one point about how a tooling axe might not necessarily be able to be used as a weapon. I don't really think that. I'm sure if you swung it, you could swing one more than enough to kill a man. The weight is a bit heavier, but you use what you've got.
If you're hard pressed, sort of, they're getting up the swineherd or whatever they call it, you've got nothing, but you have to answer the call. What have you got? You got
an axe is a weapon, and it will work just fine. This one I use for woodworking when I'm doing things like this. I use it to shave down the main wood before I go in with a knife and finish it off with my finer tools, but they work just fine.
Yeah.
And they're also a hammer, which a lot of people don't realize. The back end of an axe is just as nasty as the front end.
And you can hook and do all kinds of stuff and grip it differently as well, depending on what you want to use.
Punch with it if you wanted to. If you wanted to strike someone in close quarters with a blade like that, totally doable.
Gee whiz. It is quite interesting, because the sword is definitely a pretty special, unique item. But when you look at the fact that you've got your little axe or your little knife there, plus an axe, you've actually got a fair bit of, you've got some options there.
Definitely. And this is much more a common thing. Swords were very rare. It's a very specialized tool that isn't much good for anything else. An axe is a much more useful thing to carry around because you can use it for all sorts of things.
But there's a fine point, isn't there, between a tool axe and a weapon axe? So what is that leaning against the wall?
If you're going to go into an axe that is just a weapon, we've got into something like a Dane axe. Now, I'm sure most people know what these are. They're very, very associated with the Vikings, but they're used by the Saxons and the Normans and a whole bunch of other peoples. They're essentially one of the big pole arms of the day, and they're like a spear as well. You can thrust with them. You can hammer with them. There's a hammer face on the other side. And of course you can cut with them, and they were really good for busting open mail and breaking shields and tearing people out of shield walls because you took them by the ankle and pulled them out.
But how do we know that that's not a tool? What is the specifics about the blade that tend to indicate?
Technically you could use it as one, but they're not made for that. They're thinned out and then have a thicker cutting edge. So this one does. Not all of them did.
Yeah.
And that's meant for taking the weight out so that you don't need the metal back here where it's not cutting, but where the cutting edge is, it's reinforced.
Okay.
But it's heavy, but not so heavy. People think battle axe, they think ridiculously heavy. It's not.
They think, I guess, when their point of reference is a blockbuster, they'd say, holy crap, that thing must be super heavy. And especially if you took the small hand tool axe and you had the same idea of thickness consistent throughout the whole blade, like that, it's totally different. Yeah.
So, this one is definitely a weapon, but it had its uses as well.
For hooking. And it seems to make a ringing noise. That's scary. That's pretty cool. There you go. Fascinating. So, would an axe be something that you use? You were speaking just a second ago about the sort of limited utility of the sword as a general feature. So, is an axe better against something like mail?
Definitely. Maybe not a smaller axe, but that said, you could flip it around and just belt them with the hammer side of it, which would work fine.
So, what's an example of mail? That's pretty hilarious. Look at that.
I mean, it's basically a dress.
Yeah, it's like cloth really when you have it.
There you go.
But it does stop cuts. I've had someone thrust at me with a sword, like a big sword.
Oh yeah, here we go. Hang on. With a. Do you mind if I gently poke?
Yeah. Oh,
with the albium? Yeah, exactly. All right, hang on. So as you can see, there's no way of actually getting cut.
Yeah. What about jabby?
No, not with the early period swords.
Yeah, not with a point like that. Subsequently, you're pretty safe. Look at that. Here you go. Have a Viking sword. There you go.
Something like that though.
Oh yeah, that
open it up.
Oh yeah, that'll just the Dane axe will crush through. Give us your war face. Come on, give us your war face.
Not hungry enough.
Not hungry enough. All right, there you go.
Really mad.
There you go. So that's what male armor looks like.
That's cool.
There you go.
Here, a male hauberk. It's riveted mail. This one's wedge riveted, which I don't think is as common in the Viking era, but it was what I chose. And we'll get some close-ups for you to see as well, but essentially every ring is riveted to the next, and it makes it very strong. So something like a sword, it won't cut that. That said, if you took something like an axe and flipped it round to the hammer side, you can break people's bones underneath there. You don't need to cut through it.
Oh, yeah. And there's no inbuilt padding, is there? What you're currently wearing is probably what they would have just worn.
There is conjecture about that, but there is no evidence for gambesons in the Viking age. That's not to say none of them wore them, especially down near Byzantium. I'm sure someone had something like that. It seems that it wasn't. It's not necessary to wear it. The Yamea will still protect you with a woolen tunic on. It just doesn't soften the blow as much.
So it's that sort of the old reenactor debate. Well, I guess this is especially common in reenactment, where we're used to using blunt weapons with full force and relative safety, so our padding tends to be way thicker than it would be historically. But when you handle, say, the Dane axe or the Albion sword there, you realise how light these weapons actually are, and how you don't want to overcommit every time.
A lot of reenactors will sit there and take blows. Now, there is no way you'd want to be hit by anything if you could avoid it. The armor isn't there as a protect you from everything. It's there as a last resort. The idea is to use the shield or not get hit at all in the first place, which is
time and distance are your first defense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All these things are just safeguards. There's no guarantee. So the idea is just don't get hit.
Don't get hit. Fascinating. Well, thank you very much, Vaughan, for the overview of all the stuff. If anyone has any questions or suggestions, leave a comment below and we can take a closer look another time when you're available. So thank you, Vaughan, for coming on. And until next time, I will catch you guys later.
Bye. Thank you.